All right. Happy Wednesday. Hope you guys had a fun, you probably, cut out a little early today. I'd say that. Some people probably worked a full day, but seemed like my emails slowed down a little bit second half of the day. Um, anyway, you guys got it. It is the Ask Me Anything. We do these on Monday and Wednesday nights. Each week, talk about estate planning, mitigating taxes, how to do all that with digital assets, wealth management strategies, investments, anything that you guys want to run down. We are game for. So, I would love to hear in the comments, what you guys are looking forward to or what you're grateful for here on your Thanksgiving. Just want to say that I am grateful for you guys. Feel super blessed to be in a position to really just share my experiences with other people and some of the stuff that I've been able to put together. Blessed to have all the employees that we do working for Digital Ascension Group and the other companies under the umbrella. Let everybody know that earlier today. Mastermind members. On that side, super blessed there. The culture and everything that goes on there. If you'd told me, 2 years ago that this is where things would be, I don't know that I would have believed you. I would have been optimistic and hopeful that you were right. But anyway, just, super blessed, super grateful. Appreciate everyone that gets on the lives and comments and asks questions. And hopefully you guys feel the same way. Hopefully y'all get to spend some time with your families, eat some good food, and just really reflect on all the wonderful things that you may have in your life and even the challenges too. Challenges tend to make you better, make you stronger. They're not always fun. If you run a business, you know what I'm talking about. If you're in a marriage, you know what I'm talking about. If you have other relationships, if you have children, all those things, build you up as a person. You have to deal with different things in your life. And I don't think that there's anything that doesn't happen for a reason, or you can choose, right? So you get to choose if things happen to you or for you. I am a for you type person. And even when it's not so fun, I think that it allows you to reflect on maybe some of the choices you made so you don't make those again, or build some character traits that allow you to be successful on the next thing. So anyway, wanted to start it there. Again, happy Thanksgiving. Hope you guys have a wonderful time with your family. And we'll go ahead and hop in here to the chat over here on TikTok and on YouTube and on X. If you guys have any questions, we'll run them down. I'll hang out for, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half tonight. And hopefully get you guys some value, and maybe we'll see some price appreciation while we're on the deal here. So off the jump, we got Wolf Meow 24/7. Thanks for the insights, Jake. Question: would you expect XRP price appreciation to be gradual across 2 to 3 years? No. Like 10% price for each institution that gets on board ready to use? No. Man. So how do I explain this? As soon as one or two institutions starts using this to transact, if you're not using it, you're going to be at a disadvantage. And so with that, you're going to see a rapid adoption at scale of people choosing to use this method to settle transactions. And it's only going to take 2 banks to start doing it. Japan, I think, will be at the forefront of that. You also have the EU. You have Tether remove their, Euro Tether coin today because of the regulations there in the EU, and they're, knowing that they don't meet the compliance required to be able to participate in that region. I think that you'll get something similar here in the U.S. when stablecoin regulation is launched or put through, which I do think I think I'm still bullish on that for 2024. And on the other side of that, you're going to get price appreciation for a few different digital assets, XRP in particular. And I think you're going to see a significant move to the upside in a very short period of time, not a gradual rise over 2 to 3 years. Now, once you get there, $100, $500, $1,000 XRP, depending on what use cases and transactions are going to be moving over the network. From there, you might see gradual rise over time as more values moved onto the network and different systems start leveraging XRP to be able to settle whatever the transaction volume is. But each institution, I don't think that it's going to be that. I think you're going to see use cases, right? So Swift, as an example, to be able to settle the back end between international payments. If somebody's using XRP to do that and they're faster and cheaper than everybody else, and other people have the option to use XRP, if they're integrated with R3 Corda or they're using RippleNet, they're going to move over to that option also because they don't want to be left behind. So I think you'll see just, people talk about maybe 10% of Swift. I think it'll be very quickly all of Swift, aside from maybe a few specific instances where transactions are extremely liquid already, like USD to Euro. But anything for international remittance aside from that, and even then, if they're not willing to take dollars on both sides of the transaction and they want something else, you need some intermediary or a DEX to be able to swap between those stablecoins or fiat currencies. And I think that they'll adopt it in that instance also. Same thing for back-end settlement of the stock market. If London Stock Exchange does it, you're going to see that on the NASDAQ. You're going to see that here on the New York Stock Exchange. You're going to see that on the Australian Stock Exchange. It's not going to be just one that does it. They'll all immediately move to that. Otherwise, they're going to be at a disadvantage to their competitors. So anyway, that's why I'm so bullish on a very significant move to the upside very quickly in some of these digital assets. Again, XRP in particular. I do not think it's going to be a gradual move at all. When it's utility driven, speculation, sure, but utility, big move to the upside very quickly. The old man of XRP. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to you. When we have XRP price appreciation, I have enough in my account. Will I be able to make an appointment to come to the office and get set up with an LLC and fund it? Yeah, absolutely. We're actually looking at some office space here in Dallas, so we'll let you guys know. That'll be listed on our site, and yeah, you can definitely book an appointment and come down, to Dallas. Would love to sit down with you and work with you in that capacity. It does take some time to set up an LLC. It's not something that we can just do. You have to file it with the state and the IRS, and it takes time to get that paperwork back. But we could, help walk you through the operating agreement, have a notary on staff, do all those things. Move the assets in there, and then once we went through KYB for the wealth management side, be able to move your assets over. I think the fastest you could probably get that done would be maybe a week, 2 weeks, just being realistic. As we refine the process and our partners become a little bit faster with things and they trust us a little bit more, might be able to push that stuff along, but some stuff just takes time. It's not like you can, Wyoming's pretty good. They actually approve it and then go back and review it. So they're pretty fast. Same thing with the IRS. It might take them a day or two to get you an EIN number. KYB at Anchorage or another institution where we're holding digital assets, they're going to take a day, maybe two. We can pass them the information that we have if we have it on file. But they've still got to put it through their, OFAC and BIS checks. Yeah. So, happy to work with you in person if you do want to come down. We'll have advisors here in Dallas that you can meet with. But again, there's just going to be portions of things that we provide that have certain time restraints on them, irrespective of, how fast we work or want them to. Let's see here. Club Trofer over here on TikTok says the value is in the protocol, but XRP will have value too. I would agree with that. Yeah, the value is definitely in the protocol. The price appreciation of the token is a byproduct of the adoption of the protocol. Roger says Silver Days, Mickle Mafia. What in the house? Happy Thanksgiving. Appreciate all you do for the community. Thankful for my XRP being and working with DWP at Anchorage. Yeah, great to have you over there. Excited to be working with you. Mikkel's fantastic. Talked to him a little bit earlier today. Excited about the products that the team over there is working on. Loyan says, can you go through... I got my hand slapped on this, so I cannot. I cannot talk about specific products the DWP is offering clients. You would have to speak with one of the advisors over there. If you want to do that, you just email info@digitalwealthpartners.net, partners with an S, and they can walk you through all the strategies and products over there. My compliance officer slapped my hand for discussing some of that stuff on the lives. And so I have to make sure that we are compliant and that it's run through our compliance stuff. And it's not anything that I can discuss openly on here. But again, our advisors can work with you in that capacity and answer your questions via email, where it's documented and, auditable. Sorry. I know. I want to. Believe me, I do. The old nomad, the other nomad, he says, Mastermind group is amazing. Awesome, brother. I'm glad to hear that you're in there. Like I said earlier on, I'm just super blessed and grateful for the community that's been built there. We have, what were we today? We're like 920 people in the mastermind, which crazy to me. If you want to be a part of a group with aligned, like-minded individuals that own a significant allocation to digital assets and are being proactive and want to work together in unison on the other side of price appreciation, have a community to lean on, do deals with, grow with, then I think it's a great place to be. He says, I don't have any questions, just a request to the awesome audience. If you could like the content, press the button and subscribe. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I don't say it enough. But yeah, if you find this information helpful, if you think it's valuable, please like, subscribe, and share it with somebody else. Let's see here. Got a few. I don't think earlier on in my career, I talked about this a little bit more, but I'll take it. Over here on TikTok, we got thoughts on Riddlers and Mr. Pool. I take everything with a grain of salt, That's kind of the icing on the cake for me when it comes to XRP. There's a lot of things that are actual, real, like tangible, like you can see people working at Ripple moving to specific offices and agencies. You got people that have moved from public positions into Ripple or R3 or other companies working with XRP and then moved back into government agencies or into larger positions. With enterprises or companies. A lot of that going on. Ripple in particular, obviously has a pretty significant interest in XRP doing well and the adoption of it at scale. Same thing with a few other corporations. I think, we talked a little bit about BlackRock on the last one. We'll see. Robbie Mitchnick's the head of digital assets over there. He took his time at Ripple off of his LinkedIn profile. So, but back to the Riddlers and Mr. Pool. Again, great. If you can decode it, if you can figure it out, it's not like I haven't spent some time trying to do that. I don't think I'm smart enough for it for whatever reason. I think they've used like a pig pen cipher, and you have to have multiple accounts, and you'd have to be able to use a couple different calendars and figure out, what that looks like. A lot of clues and hints about astrology and other things in there. I will say the people that have dove further into that side probably have a lot of esoteric and deeper knowledge on the occult and things that they didn't before. So good part of the community, maybe. Anyway, educate yourself. I think it's always good if you're learning other things that you probably didn't, know beforehand. And I think it's opened people's minds to some of that stuff that maybe they wouldn't have looked at, which I think is good. But take it all with a grain of salt and appreciate the question. Let's see here. We've got Martin. He says, hola. How are you? Doing well? ¿Cómo está? Can you explain how the XRP network is decentralized, where the validators are located, and who has them? Greetings from Argentina. Very good question. Okay, so Ripple only runs 3 validators on the network. There are 200 something nodes on the network, and the validators that vote are trusted by all of the nodes on the network. So they've verified who those parties are and say that, yes, I trust that one. They're a representative of the network. They have the ability to vote. I think there's somewhere between 35 and 38 validators that are currently voting. Let me look here. If you want to look at XRP scan /amendments, you can pull it up and see what's currently being voted on. It looks like they've got a whole new swath of stuff here that's just been listed. We've got the AMM clawback, which will be important. You've got a bunch of fixes from trust lines and AMMs and credentials for digital identity, NFT, a couple fixes there. So I think that stuff is interesting. I always like to look at what amendments are up for vote. Currently here it shows that there are 35 validators that will be voting on all of these amendments that have been proposed. I think one of those is also to reduce the amount of XRP it takes to open a wallet. That was one of the things I saw on Twitter that Vet was talking about, which would be good. Right now it's 10 XRP that you have to lock up to open a wallet. If they reduce that to 1 or 2, I think that would be better for the network and the adoption, especially if we saw some price appreciation. If it's a $100 token and you got to use 10 of them to open a wallet, you got to lock up $1,000 just to have a wallet address. It could become very expensive very quickly for the average person to be able to participate on the network, which, again, may be the point. We'll see if that's the case or not. But they're all over the globe. A lot of large universities run validators. Some of those have kind of stepped away just because they weren't as active. We've seen HSBC. You saw South Korea, Japan, and a few other government agencies run a validator on the network. I think the SEC runs a node on the network. Ripple can propose things, and they do, but they can't pass anything unless those 35, or at least 80% of those 35 people agree that it should be passed. So it requires 28 votes to the yes on the amendments, and then there's a 2-week holding period that they'll trial or test whatever the amendment is, make sure that there's no bugs or issues, and if there is, then they'll drop it back down and they push a fix first, and then they do the fix, and then they'll vote on that amendment. We've seen them do that a couple different times. The XRPL has been running with no issues for since 2012, so more than 12 years. We did have a pause the other day. The network didn't go down, but it did pause for a period of time, and then came back up and fixed itself. So that's really the only time since I've been around watching things that there was even a talk of a pause or down. Solana's down, seems like, I wouldn't say weekly, but monthly for sure. Ethereum and Bitcoin have significant fees and latency, especially when there's high throughput on the network and people vying for settlement and transactions. It becomes very expensive and very slow to use. The XRPL can run up to 1,500 transactions per second. If you had a subnet, you could scale that basically infinitely, which I think that they use payment channels to be able to achieve that. So anyway, hopefully that answers your question, and I appreciate you asking it, because it is something that I thought early on, and there's a lot of FUD out there about the XRPL, that it's centralized and Ripple controls it. It's not the case. Let's see here. Daniel Trent says, "Greeting, Jakes and the fam. Can you speak on DWP qualifications and the deadline for December 1st and price implications if not making the deadline with the holiday weekend, making this the last day?" So I can't talk about products, but I can talk about what's required in order to participate with digital wealth partners. So you will need an entity that holds the assets, whether that's an IRA, a trust, a LLC, and beyond December 1st, the minimum value that the assets will have to be is north of $500,000. Had a lot of people come on board at the 100,000 level, and just to be able to make sure that we can continue to provide the level of service that we want to and set standards that are above and best for the market and for our clients. Kind of just moving things up a little bit. I actually wanted to go to 1.1 million. My team told me no. I said $500,000 is where we want to be. So anyway, as long as you paid the onboarding fee, even if your assets aren't in custody, you're good. You just want to get that done by December 1st, like you mentioned here. If you are over 100,000, you want to work with them. That would be my suggestion. And again, I don't anticipate this being a problem for very long. I think a lot of people that are holding a decent amount of these digital assets will be far beyond $500,000 in a very short period of time once we see some utility for these assets. Jesse Escobar, hey brother, he says, happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. When will we be able to earn on XLM with Anchorage? When can we start earning on our XRP without having to worry about a callback threshold? Thanks for all you do. XLM, HBAR, XDC, Flare, a lot of those other ones are going to be Q1, Q2 in 2024, and that's an Anchorage thing. If our checks would get some things in place, we'd be able to work with them and be able to custody there. There's a few states that they can't work with, like New York. But anyway, Q1, Q2 probably. And same thing for the earn on XRP. Again, I can't speak specifically to products that DWP offers or the time frame in which those will be rolled out because I got my hand slapped. But if you want to know more, you can email digitalwealthpartners.net, and they can answer those questions for you. I don't think it's too far in the future, though. Here we go. There's Alfredo. Hola! What's going on? When you custody an IRA with DWP, can you pay the AUM fees for the IRA, or do you have to pay out of pocket? If so, how much, how often? So they bill on a monthly cadence for the AUM fees. It's dispersed over the years. So if you're at 40 basis points, then it's going to just be broken down monthly, whatever that divided by 12 would be. And it's the average value of the account over the month. You can pay with fiat. You can fund the account there in fiat, or you can choose to pay out of the assets. It's up to you. And a lot of that'll be, again, I'm saying things I probably shouldn't, but I think that they're going to send out an email to clients with those details, and they will, kind of follow up with you and be able to answer those questions. And again, if you want to know more, just go ahead and email info@digitalwealthpartners.net, and they can knock it out for you. Let's see here. Rebellion says, if XRP gets to the price, we will all believe Jake. You're going to get blown up about your knowledge. I don't think anybody's going to be upset. I try to put things forth in a way that actually makes sense. There's a lot of people out there that just spew prices without any backing or reasoning behind them. They say it's just going to happen. That's what it's priced in. You need global events. Like there has to be catalysts that take place for adoption to happen, and there needs to be a reason for them to use this network and move over and settle using XRP. There needs to be some type of crisis, which I think will play out in the not too distant future. I think a lot of people, you're starting to see the S&P finally hit 6,000. I think it was Tuesday this week. That's what I've been waiting on for years. David Hunter talked about that price point a long time ago, and he felt like that was going to be, the top for the S&P. I would agree with him. I think that NVIDIA, folding like it is, and that liquidity moving into other small caps is a big deal. It's a rotation. You're going to see that from Bitcoin here too. I don't know I was wrong on 75K. First one to say that. It definitely went higher than that. We saw 99,000 for Bitcoin. I know a lot of people are hoping for that 100. Do you get it? Possibly. Bitcoin tends to cool off, but it still sees higher highs as the rotation begins for the altcoins. I think alt season's here. We're starting to see a lot of signs of that. You're seeing others break out. So, I think we're very close for a lot of price appreciation and a lot of what people that have been DCAing over the last 3 years have been waiting for. Thank you for the super chat, by the way, Alfredo. Let's see here. Ray Merritt says, enjoy the videos. Question, does DAG provide tax filing services? Thank you, brother. We do. We have a few different CPAs that we work with to be able to file your taxes for you. We have accounting firms that we work with. We have accounting software that we're partnered with. Just all depends on what you need. So, if you want to email us, I know I keep saying it, but info at, this is actually the other company, digitalfamilyoffice.io. That's who deals with the estate planning, taxes, accounting, concierge service, private jets, all the other stuff, aside from the wealth management. The short answer is yes. Man, a lot of people over here on TikTok. Appreciate y'all hopping in tonight. What's your thoughts on the best cold storage wallet? I'm from Australia, in Tasmania. Very cool. I would say Decent is who we partner with, and what I think is the best if you're not going to use institutional custody. I think if you have more than $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 in crypto, institutional custody and working with digital wealth partners is probably the best solution for that. But if you have less than that, I think I know some people that hold millions of dollars on Trezors or Ledger Nano. Again, I'm a Decent guy. They have the thumb, the biometric signature. They have a really good UI that you can move and look at. Ledger's really hard to use, which is a plus and a minus depending on how you want to look at it. If somebody tries to hack it, it'll take a while. Unless it's Ledger and they have a backdoor. Anyway, yeah, I think there even may be something in the link of this video, or for sure in the other videos that I have, if you want to go check out the Decent. And I think you get a discount. There's a code or something underneath our video that would give you a benefit if you use that. Brad might be the crypto czar. We'll see on that. Let's see here. Jay Vegas says, question on December 1st deadline. If we pay the 1K now, there should be no fee, i.e. AUM or other beyond that until we actually move our assets into Anchorage, reach out to Connor. Norfolk. That is correct. Yeah. So you can't be billed for anything that, like, you're not holding any assets there. So there's no cost on the AUM fee or returns, because there's no returns and there's no AUM. So yeah, just the onboarding fee, as long as you get that in before December 1st, you'll be good to go. And then, you worry about getting the assets over on the other side of that. David J says, happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to you, your amazing family and crew in the mastermind, all the good members there. Appreciate you, brother. Glad to have you a part of it. Let's see here. Brad isn't leaving Ripple with everything that's going to happen. Well, if they get acquired, there's already been 3 VPs and execs that have stepped down from Ripple and taken other positions. You don't tend to see that for a company that isn't going to be acquired and specific people moved in. So we'll see if that ends up being the case. I am starting to lean toward that, and I'm hoping it's a public company, maybe named BlackRock, that acquires Ripple. And if they did, a 1-to-1 on the share price wouldn't be too shabby. I think BlackRock was trading at like $1,034 per share, even a 2-to-1. I'm okay with that too. So anyway, we'll see if that's the case. But I think that, to your point, I think that's the only way that Brad leaves, is if, there was an acquisition by a larger conglomerate that purchases Ripple. Mighty Tone, can we literally just pick the current price and make a document saying that's our price? What about long and short-term gains? Does that make it more complicated? Thanks. 1099 DA is interesting. So you get a safe harbor period. It has to be reasonable, okay? So you can't just like, I mean, when you move it in there, you can point. I asked Clint Donnelly this, and he okayed it. And we work with other CPAs, and they feel that it's appropriate and okay. Also, you're consolidating the price point for that wallet to whatever it was at the point when you moved it into the LLC, right? If you moved it in as a partnership, yeah, absolutely, you would get a step up in basis. If it's a single member LLC and you contribute it, then you get no tax implications. There's no step up. It continues to how long you've held it. But yeah, you could point to that price when you moved it into the LLC and say, hey, that's my new basis, right? As long as it's not like way out of whack. If it's crazy, they're probably going to come back on you for it. But Anchorage, so when you move it into Anchorage, whatever the price was when it got in there, that's what they point to as your basis, because they don't know. They don't have a way to track it all the way back. And they don't want to have to go through all the transactions and tally it up and do all the stuff, right? So same thing here. They're giving you a grace period. I would recommend taking advantage of it and filing the paperwork like you mentioned. Marissa says she's grateful for Gary Gensler, and she was grateful that she was able to load up. I'm with you, man. A lot of people they don't like old GG. But if it wasn't for Gary, I think things would have happened a lot sooner, and a lot less people would have as big a bag as they do for a lot of these digital assets. Living Legacy, appreciate you reminding me on this. Smash the like button if does help the algorithm, gets this out to people if you think it's valuable. MGK says, hey Jake, great content, appreciate you. In your opinion, what infrastructure or mechanisms need to be established for XRP's price to be driven to actual utility rather than market narratives and FOMO? Great question. So I think those things are already in place. We were waiting for the AMMs for sure. Digital identity was another big deal. We've got, again, some amendments that are proposed for fixes. Credentials is one of those. You got some fixes for NFTs. You got some fixes for the Oracle. Right. So that was another big deal to be able to be adopted, to be able to settle market transactions and have smart contracts on the XRPO. I think another big one's going to be hooks when they propose that for the mainnet. I think that's going to be a big deal. As are light smart contracts, it'd be like Soraband smart contracts on XLM or Hyperledger. I think that the XRPO needs some of that. But until then, you've got side chains that can facilitate that and still settle through XRP if they need to. So I think we're here. I think that the digital identity, when I went to Swell last year in 2023, the main two things that Ripple harped on, they said, look, we need digital identity, KYC, AML, OFAC, BIS, native to the network, and we need custody. Until you have both those things, you can't have all the cool, sexy products that people want. The institutions aren't going to adopt them. But now that we have both those things in place, Ripple made the acquisition of Medico, and they've got their own custody solution that they can provide to the market. You've got Fireblocks. That's a huge player there. They are the back-end infrastructure for BNY Mellon. Copper's another player in that domain. And then you've also got, Ripple made the acquisition of Standard Custody. They're using that as their treasury for XRP and RLUSD, stablecoins. Stablecoins is another huge thing for liquidity on the XRPO, CBDCs on the XRPO. But again, digital identity and custody are kind of prerequisites for that. So I think the XRPL is poised. I think everything's in place. And we're waiting for the ETFs to be launched to be able to drive liquidity into the asset through a supply and demand shock. And then I think you'll see people roll out stable coins almost immediately after that, domestic here in the US and then also internationally to be able to hold price stability to whatever price they push it to. Let's see here. Marissa says, what do you know about the safe rule? It's the safe harbor rule. that the IRS has proposed for people that want to list their wallet and their basis for the assets in that wallet. Otherwise, you're going to have to go back and do all the accounting, right? You're going to use FIFO, first in, first out. So, you'll have to figure out when you bought what price it was at, and when you sell it, you got to do all the calculations on those things. But if you want to use their safe harbor rule, then you can just say, I move my assets into this LLC at this price, and this is my new basis, or what I'm going to use as my basis. And my time frame is more than a year, so it's long-term capital gains, and we're good to go. Just makes it a lot simpler on the other side for the accounting and taxes. And they know that too, because otherwise they're going to have to audit you and go through just a bunch of extra work for them. Oh man, thank you for the super chat here. Wow. What is the future of cold storage Visa versus institutional grade storage with a crypto or investment broker? I think quantum computing is actually going to be what drives the adoption of institutional custody for digital assets. So Anchorage, as an example, they use HSMs or hardware security modules that are in level 4 facilities. So level 4 facilities like an underground bunker that has armed guards and like passcodes and like only authorized personnel can get in there. Very difficult to get in there and tamper with anything. And each one of those HSMs holds a shard of the keys. The keys are never seen by people. If you use something, like let's say you work with Bitcoin IRA, as an example, they use Digital Trust as their custodian. They keep your stuff on ledgers in a level 4 facility, not on HSMs. They don't shard the keys. There's a physical person that walks in there at 4 o'clock every day, sees your keys, executes the transactions for whatever you did to move your assets inside their infrastructure. And that's how that works. And unfortunately, when a person's involved, it's very difficult to get insurance, especially by Lloyd's of London, because there are so many risks and potential, risk of loss if they just miss a keystroke or do something wrong. That's why algorithmic, sharded institutional grade custody, I think will be what's used at scale long-term to protect your assets, especially if they've appreciated to a large amount. You can have multi-sig and you can have governance around that. So if you're moving more than a certain amount, you can have a certain amount of signers on the account. Biometrics and other things that would be required in order to access those things, your digital assets. Whereas with the cold wallet, yeah, you can hop on a plane and take it with you, and that's great. But you also have complete responsibility if there's a loss on those assets. They're not insured. God forbid something bad happens to you and your spouse or other people that would benefit from those assets they don't have the password to the keys. This ends up not working out well. And then again, like I mentioned in the beginning, quantum computing is going to be able to hack. Like they could already hack Bitcoin if they wanted to. I know that's not going to be a popular thing to say, but it's true. I think that, cold wallets are never going to provide the level of security that institutional custody does. And I think that's on purpose. I think that we're at a point now where they're starting to roll that out at scale because they know that that's coming. Thank you for the super chat, by the way. Let's see here. Paul says Caleb and Brown doesn't hold insurance for custody, but says Fireblocks does. Yeah. The tech they use to secure the assets, is that okay in your opinion? It's not crime insurance, Paul. So Fireblocks does provide insurance on their infrastructure, but not on the assets themselves. If you were to get hacked under their watch, there are no protections. That's not required by law of anybody that's custodying digital assets. We don't partner with anybody that doesn't have that custody. I think Caleb and Brown is great for brokerage. I don't think it's the best place to store your assets long-term. I think a cold wallet or institutional custody is the better solution there. If you do have a position that you're trading or you're going to exit at a certain price point, I think that's fine to work with them. and hold whatever amount that is with them. But anything beyond that, I would not use them for custody personally. Even though I really like those guys, I think they're great. I think that their tech is awesome. Our number one rule at Digital Wealth Partners and Digital Family Office is do not lose XRP. So if there's a potential, even if it's a small potential loss, it's not something that we participate with. And that's, again, why we didn't pursue the relationship with Archax at the time. I think they're going to rectify that, and it is something that we're going to work with them on. But yeah, you're correct about Caleb and Brown. Let's see here. Oh, I've been asked about ETHgate over here. I would say watch XRP Unleashed or Rig from the Start, whatever you want to call it. Gives you a lot of information about that. I like the way that it was presented. They didn't put anything in there that was circumstantial. It was always provable, and they had receipts for everything. Should you worry about your ERC20 tokens? I don't think so. I think that ETH will end up being a security at the end of the day. I know that Prometheum's unpopular for saying that. I agree with them. I think that anything that is pure proof of stake, where you're having to give up the asset in consideration for returns produced by somebody else, meets all the prongs of the Howey test. And pure proof of stake will end up being regulated a securities offering. Working on solutions to be able to provide a wrapper for that and make it compliant for people in anticipation of that happening. But as far as ERC20 tokens, the EVM is not going away. The Ethereum virtual machine is going to be around in perpetuity as long as blockchain exists and smart contracts exist. People are going to want to use Python and Solidity type contracts to be able to set things up. So it depends on what networks you're talking about or what tokens you're talking about. But I do think, Matic and Polygon provide a really good solution as a layer 2 on Ethereum. And we'll see. I think that ecosystem could migrate over to the XRP sidechain, the EVM sidechain, wrap a token and issue it over there. I think there's a lot of ways that you could migrate stuff. And move it to whatever's going to be the most liquid environment or the best suited moving forward. So, depends on what the token is. I'm not saying everything lasts over there, but I am hopeful that there are going to be a good portion of those that are used for something, especially if they are layer 2s. Let's see here. Got another super chat here. Appreciate you. Thoughts on crypto XAI sector? Crypto XAI sector. Like crypto Twitter? Is that what you're asking me about? Or XAI, the company, like Grok? You've mixed crypto and XAI and then just said sector. So I'm not can you give me more clarity down below, and I'll follow up on it, and I'll remember this was a super chat, and I'll make sure to answer it. I just don't want to speak on something I'm not. I need defined terms, so I apologize. Let's see here. Been through those. We'll scroll on down here. People asking really good questions tonight. As usual, you guys always have really good questions. Trizzy Trey, I like the name, says, if XRP were to explode to $100 overnight, can you give a general outline of what you would do if you didn't have a plan in place and what kind of return you would set up for yourself? So anytime somebody asks me this type of question, I always go back to financial freedom, my definition for financial freedom. And that is, whatever your monthly expenses are, map those out. Like, have your dream life, okay? Figure out what that is. And then you want double that from passive income. So, and it's no income is going to be exactly passive, just so you know. You want to watch those eggs in that basket and make sure that they're good, or work with a professional, but you still want purview on that. So whether it's real estate or private equity or stocks and bonds and dividends and mutual funds and whatever else you put your money into, you want to have an understanding of it. But I would, figure out what my expenses are for my dream life or however I want to live, double that amount, and then figure out how much money I need to make or have in order to get that amount of monthly income at, somewhere between a 5 and 10% yield on that money. So as an example, you might need, let's say you wanted $1 million a year. Well, you need $500,000 a year is what you need post taxes. So probably going to have to whittle that down a little bit. Let's say it's $300,000 a year. Okay. That you need to live on. And that would be more than enough for you to live a comfortable life, pays your house payment, whatever else, vehicle, vacations, and these are all things you need to think about. You'd need about $1 million a year worth of income to meet my definition of financial freedom, because you're going to need at least 600,000 to be twice that amount of income. And let's say you're just going to pay all the taxes on it. If you have it structured the right way, you have it in an LLC, you're running a business, you got it inside a trust, you got it inside of an insurance policy. There's a bunch of ways you can mitigate those taxes, but let's just say you're going to get whacked with the 40% because you live in, a state that has some state tax, and Trump also, doesn't do away with the IRS or make it a flat income tax or, remove the income tax like we're hoping for. So you're going to pay 40% tax. That leaves you $600,000. You need, somewhere between 10 and $20 million to be able to produce 5 or 10% a year to be able to generate those type of returns and never touch the principal. So, to your point here, at $100, how much would you need for $10 million? You'd need 100,000 XRP, right? Today that's 150 grand, give or take. A couple weeks ago, it was 50 grand. Now it's 150 grand, moving up real quick. So that I just kind of back into that, but that's the thought process for me, and how I figure out, what I would need to have in order to be able to produce the returns that I need in order to live my life and be more than comfortable, financially free. Right. So, hopefully that helps you. I know that's probably not the answer that you wanted, but hopefully it gives you some type of framework to use and figure that out for yourself. Kev, thank you for the super chat. No question, but I thank you so much for the super chat. Let's see here. Larry Whited says, if setting up an LLC, would you recommend putting all your digital assets in or keep a part private? Happy Thanksgiving. Again, up to you, Larry. The LLC provides you a lot of flexibility on the other side of price appreciation to set up a trust or a foundation or whatever else, insurance policies, be able to write that off, the in-kind distribution or the in-kind funding of the PPLI policy that you set up. If you plan to pass things down, you might keep a portion separate, but it's going to be in your personal name. So, whatever portion you wanted to move into the trust, you might keep in your personal name. I would go ahead and move it into the LLC just so that if you did want to sell a portion of it, and you can gift it out of the trust too. And so I actually know what I would say, go ahead and move it in. And this is the other reason for that. Let's say you've got, we're going to play it conservative here. 300,000 XRP goes to $100. You got $30 million. Okay. You're single or you're married. You're married. You get 27.22 million that you can move into a trust or gift over your lifetime with no tax implications. Gift tax isn't going anywhere. It should be reduced in 2026 back to close to 6 million. This is the highest it's ever been at 13.6 million per person. So take advantage of it while you can. Anyway, between you and your spouse, you get 27.22. You got $30 million. If that's in an LLC, you could gift a few equity points or units to your children or your brother or your cousin, somebody else you wanted to take care of. Okay. And in doing that, you'd be able to get a 409 valuation done on that LLC. And because now you have minority owners on the cap table, you could get a reduction in the value of the LLC. Even though the assets didn't go down in value, the value of the equity that you own did. And it can be reduced by somewhere between 25 and 30%. So now you only have, $22.5 million worth of value that you're going to gift into the trust. So you actually could get all of it in there with no tax implications, right? So that's one of the other benefits of an LLC. Again, if you want to cash a portion out, you want to set up, you want to put a portion of that in the PPLI policy and then make the trust that you set up the beneficiary of that. You're a key employee of the business. The business does not exist. You can't make investments. You can't do all the stuff that you want to do without you. So you take an insurance policy out on you and maybe your spouse or somebody else that you deem as a key employee of the business, and you can fund those in kind and make the trust the beneficiary of those. So anyway, it's up to you. I can't tell you what to do, but the majority of our clients go ahead and move all their assets into the LLC in order to get all the benefits on the other side of price appreciation. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Man, a lot of people over here on TikTok also. We got Derek Moore says buy XRP now. Look, I can't tell people what to do. I don't own anything else. It's the only thing I've purchased. There's a lot of other projects that I think are fantastic. HBAR is one of them. XLM, XDC, Velo, Stronghold, Quant, VeChain, you got ICP, Chainlink. There's a ton of stuff that I think will be used and will be around on the other side of regulations, and probably benefit from that. Flare, Songbird, a lot of tokens. I don't own anything else. I only own XRP. I'll continue to purchase it even up to probably $50 per XRP. Just like Bitcoin, right? Like, imagine if you had been around at the beginning of Bitcoin in 2010 and you bought it under $1, and then you bought it all the way up to $5, and then you continued to buy it even on up to $100 for Bitcoin. Well, it's tacked on another 3 zeros. It's 1,000x since then, pretty much, right? My anticipation is that XRP, when it's adopted and used, and the network moves to a level of adoption and use, that the asset will continue to have to appreciate over time. 2030, 2035, you could see a 6-digit XRP, right? That seems like a crazy pipe dream, but we've already seen one asset do it. So why couldn't XRP, if it's actually used, and that amount of volume and value is moving over the network? So for me, in my mind, even though it's not 2 for $1 anymore, still relatively cheap in comparison to where it's going, in my opinion. Not financial advice, for entertainment, educational purposes only. Take it with a grain of salt. I'm just some crazy guy on the internet and TikTok. The Sosa House. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. Change of pace from crypto Q&A to your fitness background. Are you a fan of peptides? I find great benefits in my 50s from adding them to my diet and exercise program. Yeah, I am a fan of peptides. Most peptides are, pieces of HGH that have been snipped out, and other things as well. I took a wide variety of pharmaceuticals when I was competing, and they're all tools, right? I think it's unfortunate that they banned steroids in 1991. I think if they had allowed that to continue at the rate that it was, we would have very safe steroids today that didn't have any side effects. There were many things toward the end there that were starting to be third generation steroids and pharmaceuticals that had very low to little side effects and great upside, a lot of anabolism. And that's kind of what you see in the peptides now, right? Like, they're for experimental use only, right? So I don't necessarily condone or prescribe the use of any substances but I think there are tools that people can use in order to achieve greater performance and benefits, and that exploring those is your right to do so with your body. So anyway, yeah, I'm a proponent. My business partner, Max Avery, was a power lifter. He was training for the Arnold when he got hernia and had to step away from that. And then I competed all the way through 2019 at nationals. Largest I was 230 pounds at 5% body fat. I'm about 5'11". So not huge, but also not small. I weigh about the same now. I'm definitely not 5% body fat, but that, I was augmenting my performance with some performance enhancing drugs. So anyway, yeah, I don't condone it, don't prescribe it, but I think it's people's right if they want to go down that path. Let's see here. Thoughts on Brad Garlinghouse or Chris Giancarlo possibly being crypto czar? I think it's great. I think that the White House needs somebody there to guide them on regulation and how to govern this asset class and the technology. I don't think that there's been somebody in that capacity up to this point. I think it's put the U.S. at a disadvantage in comparison to the rest of the world, really. So appreciate the question, and I think it's a great opportunity for us. What do we got here? El Jefe says, hey, Jake, looking into setting up a trust for my crypto. There are so many different types of trust. Any recommendations? Thanks. So most of the time we see clients use an asset protection trust out of Wyoming, Nevada, or South Dakota. Most often that is Wyoming, just because of the regulation there around digital assets. You might set up international asset protection trust in the Cook Islands or Nevis or somewhere else. If you do want to move offshore, up to you on that. Being an expatriate here of the U.S., difficult. You're gonna have to pay a lot of exit tax if you decide to do that. On the other side of price appreciation, and I'll say this about trusts. Okay, so they're contract law is what they are. If somebody's trying to sell you a common law trust, run the other way. If they throw a bunch of crazy vernacular at you that you don't understand and string a bunch of stuff together, run the other way. If they tell you it's a tax haven and they can defer taxes in perpetuity, run the other way. Anyway, there's just a lot of nonsense out there. But what I was going to say is, you can weave different benefits from different types of trusts into your trust if you want those provisions in there and you're working with the right professionals. So let's say your children aren't that savvy with finances, and you know that, right? And you want to protect the principal and what you've built. You might have a spendthrift provision in your trust. And so that would keep your children from ever being able to access the principal. They would only be able to get the returns off of what was generated by the initial contribution or investments. And that would be paid out to them as beneficiaries, and they really wouldn't have much to do with the management of the assets. You can set up a dynasty trust where things waterfall. You set up an insurance trust. You set up, again, an asset protection trust there. And that one's going to be irrevocable. If you set up a living trust, which is what most attorneys in states are going to try to hit you with, I would not recommend that for digital assets. What you're going to put in a living trust is going to be things that you use and you want to pass on. So your home, vacation homes, your vehicles, family heirlooms, gold and silver, stuff like that. Things that aren't going to appreciate rapidly or spit off cash flow, things that you're going to use and you want to keep out of probate and pass on to your beneficiaries. Those can go in a living trust that's filed in your state, revocable or irrevocable. Asset protection trusts are irrevocable. There are no revocable asset protection trusts because you're going to set up a distribution trustee and potentially a trust manager. And if you have an LLC in there, you might have a manager for the LLC. Anyway, I guess, talking through this, I would advise just working with a professional that knows what they're doing. That's what I did. That's why I assembled the team that I did. I think that we have probably the best attorneys in the U.S. that deal with digital assets, aside from maybe 2 or 3, which I also know, and can refer you to if you want them. But yeah, just reach out to our firm. We're happy to just make referrals for people. We don't get compensated on that, just so you know. Attorneys cannot fee share. We're not a lawyer. We're not under the bar. So we just want to make sure that our clients are taken care of and they have the best options. And so that's why we refer people out. So hopefully, not in a too distant future, we'll have people in-house having those conversations, but we're not quite there yet. Mighty Tone, how will the clawback work with RLUSD? So anybody that issues a stablecoin is going to want a clawback provision. And that's one of the things that they invoked on the XRPL. So issued assets, not XRP. XRP cannot be clawed back. It cannot be frozen. Any issued assets on the network, so stablecoins, RWAs, NFTs, other stuff, can be clawed back if there's found to be foul play, right? Somebody got it that wasn't supposed to. They sent it to the wrong spot. They can pull it back, which has been a big problem with crypto for a long time. You just send your money into the abyss to the wrong wallet address, or to a dormant wallet, or to another network's wallet. It's gone, right? So you need some way to be able to claw that back. RLUSD won't be any different. Ripple will be able to claw back transactions, move things back if they choose so. On the AMMs, I think there'll be an optionality that you can flip on and off. So if assets are contributed to the AMM, you won't be able to claw them back out of there. Any assets that are operating outside of AMMs or liquidity pools, you'll be able to claw back if the transaction went awry for whatever reason. SBI also runs a validator on the XRPL. You are correct. Let's see here. Oh, it's an interesting theory. Fire Marshal Bill. He says testing for the black swan. I'm assuming you're referring to when I was talking about the pause on the XRPL. Definitely possible. Honest Aim, thank you, brother. Good to see you here. I hope you and your family are well and are going to have a good Thanksgiving. He said, thanks for leading the mastermind group in such a credible way. Please let me know when you are at the shop next week. Wife and I have a small thanks to hand you. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you, brother. And I definitely will. I will reach out and let you guys know if I do go into town. It'll probably be, I don't know, maybe Thursday next week. Anybody over here on TikTok that I'm missing? Just want to pay you guys some attention. Eventually we'll consolidate this. Actually, Max was telling me how to do that today. We'll try to get that done. Let's see here. We've got, how do you think he will pull off the no capital gains tax? Well, I actually think that this is a good thing for crypto, and I think it's actually needed for XRP and XLM and HBAR and a lot of these assets, and those in particular. If these networks are going to be adopted at scale and the institutions are going to be using them to transact, you don't want to have to deal with tax implications if there is a fluctuation in value between the time you sent it and when it landed and when you sold it and when you bought it. That would be very problematic for settling transactions at scale or bridge currencies, right? And that's the whole premise behind XRP and XLM. So for me, I think that it actually makes them a lot more usable in that capacity, and is likely going to be what plays out. And which is exciting, right? So if people do want to liquidate a portion of their holdings, they're not going to be subject to capital gains. But again, you're going to miss out on the upside on that. So a lot of, what I've been working on and wanted to happen, can't talk about products that we're working on. But what I would like to do is borrow against my XRP so that I don't have to sell it. And then I can use that liquidity in whatever manner I want to, and I don't lose exposure. And then I don't have any capital gains anyway. I have to service the debt for whoever lent me the money. And there's a payment schedule that's required for that. But eventually as the asset appreciates, I could borrow again and pay off the original note, and refinance it. That's what a lot of founders do with their stock. over time after they've gone public. So I envision something very similar. It's a great infinite banking concept, and I think that that's what a lot of people will do with their digital assets. Create 2116 says, what would be the first thing you do if you hold over 100,000 in digital assets? Does your digital wealth partner custody assets in all 50 states? Is DWP similar to Caleb and Brown? Had to be careful not to talk about products. I mean, I hold my assets in institutional custody over there. Yeah, that's what I would be looking to do over 100,000. Just again, like, and my wife's not crypto savvy, so just as an example, like, God forbid something happens to me. If I just had it on cold wallet, she's got no clue. If I got it on exchange, no clue. Like, it could go to hundreds of millions of dollars. It doesn't benefit her because she wouldn't know how to get to it. So that's one of the things for me. Same thing for my child, right? Like, so that's one of the reasons I think institutional custody is so important. You have beneficiaries, you have trustees that will step in, listed to manage the account. You know, God forbid something happened to the original person that contributed or managed the entity. I would get it into an LLC, single or married for that amount. Makes a lot of sense to go ahead and move it into an LLC. And then, you know, again, you could reach out to digital wealth partners. They can hold assets for anybody here in the U.S. Doesn't matter the state. New York, I think Anchorage just got their stuff fixed for that. And Caleb and Brown is a broker. So Anchorage has a custody entity, and that's who we work with on the custody. And then they have a brokerage that's separate. They have to separate the two. Actually the transaction costs there at Anchorage are way less than anywhere else. There's no spread. It's just 20 basis points. It doesn't matter the size of the transaction also. So there's a huge savings on that if you do plan to sell a portion of it. Even if things go to no taxes, you're still going to get hit with whatever the exchange charges you to cash stuff out. So big savings there. And would love to work with you if that's something you're interested in. You just want to email info@digitalwealthpartners.net. Let's see here. Carl, thank you for the super chat, brother. He says, paid the 1K and set up DWP. I think I've done everything correctly. Mr. Fred was a huge help, and thank you for everything. Absolutely, man. Fred is a good friend, mastermind member. He's been around for a long time, was a client, and then decided to get his 65 and come work with us, which is really cool. So just really proud to have him on the team. Excited for the future for everybody there. But Fred's awesome, and I'm glad you were able to talk to him and get everything set up. Fire Marshal Bill says, can I pay the fee in XRP? Depends on the fee, but the answer is yes. We can figure it out for you, Bill. Promise. Sierra has asked, DWP digital custody IRAs like iTrust Capital? Yes, you can move your IRA from iTrust over to Digital Wealth Partners. You get the insurance on your account there, which I don't believe you get at iTrust. You can still trade inside that account, same way that you would at iTrust, tax advantage. And there's some other products and services around that DWP can work with you to provide that iTrust likely never will. So yeah, again, I keep saying it, but info@digitalwealthpartners.net. They can answer all those questions and walk you through any of those opportunities that you want to know about. Scotty J says, you honestly think they will sell Ripple? That's insane. Look, somebody came along and offered them $100 billion. Like, why wouldn't you? Right? You don't have to deal with going public. You don't have to deal with the scrutiny. You don't have to go deal with all that. They will deal with it. They're going to do, an acquisition and do. It's a public company that's going to acquire them. So the deal for me is the escrow. I don't think they're going to let Ripple manage the escrow long term. It's going to have to be a larger body, especially if it's going to be adopted in the use case that we all hope it's going to be. I don't think that they're going to allow just a private company to do that. If Ripple is bought, what do you see happening to XRP's price? Depends on who buys it. Maybe they're rolled in as a systemically important piece of the government, right? Maybe that's what happens. I don't know. It would go up. It would have to go up. Would be my answer to that. Uzi says, is Uphold Vault safe to store XRP? Yeah, I like Uphold's Vault. I think that's a good solution. They hold one of the keys. They can't transact without you. They can't sign any transactions. You hold the keys, but they can regenerate your keys with their key. When I talked to Simon about that, August of 2023 in Austin, Texas, sitting around drinking some whiskey, he was telling me why they set that up and how it was going to solve problems for them, the company, and their clients. I think it's a great solution. I think it gives them a cash flow where it used to be a cost. So people used to just use Uphold to sit their XRP on there as their wallet and didn't trade anything. And it cost them somewhere between $15 and $25 a year just to maintain their accounts. And now they've basically offloaded those people and turned that into a revenue stream. I think it's a great value add, and it benefits both parties. Let's see here. Pegasus, interesting name. Do your services for wealth management for digital families reach out to residents in Europe, in particular Greece? We do work with international parties across Europe, the UK, Japan, Brazil, Canada, Mexico, and Australia. So the answer is yes, and we do have people that we can work with to set up, entities over there in those jurisdictions that we can then face digital wealth partners to manage the assets. So yeah, happy to have that conversation if it's something that interests you. Let's see here. Don't want to forget about TikTok. Back and forth. Let's see here. Appreciate you following up with people here in the chat, Max. Good people over here. Have you heard of Kivo Cold Wallet? It has a beneficiary option on it. Interesting. See, I mean, that's a problem in the market, right? So people are going to come up with innovative solutions. I'm glad that somebody else is looking to create something that's kind of like a bridge between a cold wallet and institutional custody. There's a lot of people that are not your keys, not your crypto. Again, you're a signer on the institutional custody. Nothing can be done without the signature of the client. So you don't give up your control, or you give up partial control, right? And that's actually beneficial. And the reason for that is any multi-sig wallet, one, it's unlikely that we're going to be in a car with you and pass away. So somebody will have access to the assets to be able to bring in the next person from your family, the beneficiary or the trustee, make sure that that's done correctly. But aside from that, if you are staking your digital assets and earning a yield and they're paying back to that wallet, if you're in control and you have domain of the wallet, those are taxable. That's taxable income. So you're going to get taxed on the distribution that you receive for the staking rewards. And if you don't convert it to fiat right then you're going to convert it later and you're going to be taxed again. So anyway, if it goes to the wallet that is working with a wealth manager, it's not taxable because you don't have full control or domain of that wallet, and therefore staking rewards are not taxable. So benefit. But yeah, very cool to hear that there are other people working on that solution for that problem, because it definitely is a problem. Probably hang out for another 5 minutes here. Randy, thank you for the super chat, brother. He says, hey, Jake, can you explain your bullishness on BlackRock acquiring Ripple? In what manner would it be beneficial? Any potential drawbacks? Thanks. There's always pros and cons of every, transaction, right? So you're seeing a few people step down from certain positions in Ripple. I think that you might lose some good people if an acquisition were to be made. Not to say that there wouldn't be people brought in that could fill those gaps. By BlackRock, I mean, they are like the largest institution in the world at this point, managing, something like 11.5, $12 trillion. They make markets. That's what they do. So repackaged debt. It'd be beneficial in that the escrow would then be managed by somebody that I felt would be more appropriate. Obviously, if BlackRock made that acquisition and they got the escrow, they would want to use it. They would be the ones managing it. There would be significant adoption of XRP at scale in multiple use cases, including back-end settlement for markets. There'd be a ton of stuff on the XRP front that would be beneficial if that acquisition were to be made. Drawbacks. Status quo has been great. There's been a lot of adoption of the network. I think you could see potential countries that weren't already on board, or entities that weren't already on board, maybe back away if there weren't that separation between Ripple and BlackRock. And I think maybe that's been the point the whole time. So yeah, we'll see, right? There's probably stuff that I haven't even thought about. There always is. There's always ripple effects, no pun intended, on the other side of a transaction or an event that people can't see, that are things that kind of cascade out of that. I don't know what those are. I'm sure they'll become apparent if that does happen. But great question. And yeah, super bullish if that were to take place, both on Ripple equity and on XRP. Let's see here. Thoughts on Velo and SHX? Good question. So I've made videos about those before. If you want to go back on my YouTube channel, you can check both of those out. They're both layer 2s on Hyperledger. I think that SHX could be acquired by a payment processor. I don't know that it'll ever get to 1 or 2% of total payment processors for merchants like Stripe. But if it did, you could see a really big price for SHX. Velo, I think, could be used at scale by peer-to-peer lending and purchasing of securities and other financial products. I think it's an interesting concept. I think that there needs to be some more regulation, brought in around that. I think it's going to be difficult for them to meet certain compliance if things are brought forth for regulation on digital assets. But aside from that, I think that they're well positioned. I think they're on the right network for it, for a peer-to-peer solution. And I think they have the right asset to be able to settle the volume that may trade over it. So yeah, bullish on both those. Not something I currently hold, but great opportunities for people that want to go check them out. Not financial advice. Let's see here. Caroline says, hey Jake. Hey, ma'am. So just to confirm, if I want to pay the $1,000 for onboarding before 12/1, I would need to set up an LLC prior. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, that's one of the requirements in order to begin the onboarding process and pay the fee, is that the assets would be in an entity, whether that's a trust or an LLC. The LLC is the faster of the two. Be difficult to get that done by 12/1. You could get it filed and then say, hey, I filed it. It's just a question on the onboarding. You can click yes. I'm not saying to lie, don't lie. But if you paid for the LLC or you're filing one in the middle of filing one and you haven't got your paperwork back yet, but it's on the way, then you could say yes, you do have one, and then be able to get in before the cutoff. Let's see here. I'm going to go on down to the bottom, seeing as we only have a little bit left here. All the way down. Here we go. Thoughts on A0. Angus, this is very good. So we actually have one of the founders of A0 on a cap table that we're part of, Matthew Nieberg. Good guy. I think A0 is a really good project. I think the throughput on the network is crazy. I think the returns for people that run nodes on the network is really good. I think that it's at a very reasonable price currently. I could see a lot of applications where A0 could be, used. Anyway, talking to Matt about some of that stuff, and I think it's a good project. I don't own any, but I think it's a good blockchain. Metallicus. I talked about Metallicus last week. Wasn't overly impressed with their chief of operations in the UK when we spoke to them, but it's been a while. It's been a year and a half. There could have been a lot of changes over there. I know a lot of people that are super bullish on that blockchain. It's settling transactions, up to $10,000 is really kind of their niche. I think Hyperledger does that a lot better than Metallicus. The layer 0 and the layer 1 and the back and forth, and anyway. Again, maybe I don't understand it. I'm happy saying that. It's not something I am bullish on. Let's see here. CJ says, you're the best, Jake. Can you run down the Japan dominoes falling for XRP to be used? I can. Yes. Yeah. And we actually had some movement on the yen today, which was interesting. So it appreciated against the dollar. I anticipated that Japan would have to raise interest rates before that would start to happen. Maybe some people know that that's coming and they're starting to buy yen because they, are starting to pay off their debts, like people that are, exposed on the reverse carry trade. Maybe they got a little word through the grapevine and started doing that. We also saw a downturn in some stocks today, so potential for that. Tomorrow is a U.S. holiday, Thanksgiving, so markets will not be trading here, but they will be in Japan. So be interesting to see, something were to happen tomorrow. But yeah, the yen, if it continues to appreciate against the dollar at the rate that it did today, tomorrow, you could start to see the reverse carry trade unwind like it did back in August, where we saw a huge drawdown, 13% in stocks in a single day. And the reason for that is people are going to have to sell off their positions in U.S. treasuries, bonds, mutual funds, the stock market to swap back to dollars, to convert back to yen, to repay their loans. Over the last 15 years specifically, tens of trillions with a T, not B, T, trillions of dollars have been borrowed in yen at very low interest rates, variable interest rates, I might add, and then taken out and put to work in other areas to be able to generate a yield in return. It's a great spread that people have been earning, especially if they've been participating in U.S. equities and they borrowed the yen to do that, been crushing it, right? So with that, as interest rates have risen in Japan, the 10-year treasury in Japan's back over 1%, which it hasn't been in decades. They're getting squeezed. And especially with us moving interest rates down, now you're generating lower returns on treasuries here domestic in the US. So with that gap becoming smaller, and you're going to have to pay whatever it is to sell your position and then convert back to the yen to repay your loans, people, when the yen starts appreciating very quickly, become concerned about that and will sell off their positions. So I think we're poised for that to happen. Trillions of dollars to be sold off in U.S. treasuries and stock market as soon as people get scared. And as soon as some people get scared, everybody else gets scared too. It's like a bank run. They're like, So it happens all at once. And when that occurs, you're going to see a huge swath of international treasuries or U.S. debt come onto the market. And when that happens, our recourse for that is basically to roll out stablecoin regs here in the U.S. and make sure that we can stabilize the debt market. That'll make it where Google and Amazon and PayPal and all these people that want to issue a stablecoin have to buy those treasuries and soak them up. So that'll be a great way to stabilize it. What that does, though, is then Now we have stablecoin regs. There's a provision in there that requires that any dollar-denominated stablecoin is fully backed by cash deposits, or cash equivalents. No digital assets. Tether holds about 5% of their backing in Bitcoin. At least that's what's listed on their balance sheet. It could be significantly more than that. They are currently the 5th or 6th largest holder of U.S. debt or treasuries. They've been the ones soaking it up as these foreign countries have been selling it. The Fed could have been using them as a patsy to do that. I think they have. So anyway, but now you've got all these large enterprise stablecoins that want to come onto the market. And you've got Tether with Bitcoin stuck on its balance sheet because of the lawsuit with Celsius. It's locked up. They're not going to be able to liquidate it to get it compliant. So they either get delisted, which would be crazy, or frozen, or there could be a couple different ways that they could go about it. They may even sanction Tether for some of the other transactions that have been occurring on the network between Iran and other sanctioned parties that have been using Tether to transact outside the purview of the U.S. government. So if that were to take place, liquidity on exchanges would be impacted in a very bad way. And Shane Ellis talked about this and what circumstance could play out for XRP if it were used to supplement that liquidity that was needed. You could see, an exchange drive the price of XRP up to $589 is what he proposed. But you're also going to have impact on the U.S. stock market, especially now that we have Bitcoin at close to all-time highs, was all-time high just recently. And then they rolled out options. I thought, just being sensible, that institutions would take options to the downside to hedge their positions, their spot positions. Oh no, they didn't do that. They took out longs and they leveraged the longs on Bitcoin, just like everybody does. And that's why, we talked about this. I don't remember if it was the other night. It must have been in Carbon 2 chat last night. The gentleman asked me why, when Bitcoin tanks, the rest of the market tanks. People have leveraged longs on Bitcoin, and when they lose that position, they have to pull collateral from other places to make themselves whole. And they sell off positions in other tokens. And so that's why you see the whole market move down. This would be similar, but now, people that hold spot positions, the ETFs, would have unrealized losses because they don't settle real time. They would then have to pull from traditional stocks, sell those off in order to cover their positions on Bitcoin and make the holders and the ETF holders whole. Especially if there was like a 50, 60, 70% drawdown in Bitcoin, which I think could happen if Tether, were to could get its legs cut out from underneath it. So, and if all those other stable coins were issued on the XRPL, wow, all that liquidity moves onto that network very quickly. You get the launch of the ETFs for XRP. You could roll the liquidity from Bitcoin into the ETF for XRP to drive price up. And then you got Project Ion that was developed with the DTCC. They could be turned on to be able to settle the back end of the stock market real time and keep those unrealized losses from causing the rest of the stock market to collapse. So anyway, that's my big long domino theory that I put out back in March of this year. There's been some iterations and changes to it, but the players are all still the same. So I do anticipate that that's going to play out. Oil, I think, could be a catalyst in the Middle East to drive Japan to raise interest rates and unwind the carry trade. Seeing some conflict over there. We'll see if that is actually what works out and what happens. But yeah, I think that we're pretty close. I think there's a high probability that it could happen before the end of the year. All right, we are at an hour and a half. Just want to make sure there's no more super chats here and I didn't miss anybody. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I hope you guys have a wonderful Thanksgiving. As always, if you do want to check out the mastermind, I always try to leave a free code here. So if you want to do 1 month for free, it is Beyond Broke, all capitalized, the number 1 and then MO at checkout. You can go to mastermind.beyondbroke.com. Like I said, great community there, aligned interests, great people and culture. We are going to raise rates 10x on the other side of price appreciation. and we're going to lock it down for 30 days. We're going to put provisions in place to make sure that there are not malicious parties coming in. Very protective of all the individuals there in the mastermind and the culture that we've built. So if that's something you think you might want to be a part of, go ahead and use the free code. You're going to want to friend me or connect with me over on LinkedIn is the one way that we do kind of have a little bit oversight on who's joining. And, you know, I would love to see you in there if that's something you're interested in. But again, we are going to raise rates substantially on the other side of price appreciation for anybody that wants to come in after the fact. If you want an LLC or you're looking for custody, you're going to want to go to digitalfamilyoffice.io, and you can go to the services there and get both of those things done. And if you want to email about and ask questions, just info@digitalfamilyoffice.io, and then same thing for Digital Wealth Partners, info@digitalwealthpartners.net. If you're, you know, concerned or want to have questions or talk to us about the wealth management side of the business. But with that, I hope you guys have a wonderful week, a wonderful Thanksgiving. Enjoy time with your family, reflect on all the wonderful things in your life, and we will see you on the next one.